Before we begin, I want to ask you for something real. Not a like, not a comment, not even a subscription. Just your attention. Because this story is not just about rap. It is not just about fame. It is not just about social media drama. This story is about something deeper. It is about family. It is about pain. It is about anger. And it is about what happens when somebody says something so disrespectful, so personal, so cruel, that there is no easy way to take it back. So before we get into this, take 1 second and think about the person who means the most to you. Maybe it is your mother. Maybe it is your father. Maybe it is your grandmother. Maybe it is the person who raised you when life was hard. Now imagine millions of people laughing while somebody disrespects them in public. How would that make you feel? Would you stay calm? Would you ignore it? Would you let it slide? Or would something inside you wake up instantly? Because that is exactly what happened here. One post, one reaction, one live stream, and suddenly, the entire hip-hop world was watching a situation spiral into one of the most uncomfortable, personal, and dangerous beefs we have seen in a very long time. This was not just bars. This was not just jokes. This was not just internet trolling. This became a war of pride, family, trauma, legacy, and disrespect. And the moment dead mothers were brought into it, everything changed. So if you believe there are still some lines in this world that should never be crossed, stay with me until the end. Because this story starts with 50 Cent. But it doesn't stop there. It grows bigger. It pulls in T.I. It pulls in King Harris. It pulls in Boosie. And before it is over, the whole culture is asking one very serious question. When somebody crosses a line like this, where do you even go from there? Let's get into it. There are always rules in hip-hop. Some rules are spoken out loud. Some rules are understood without anybody saying a word. You can clown somebody's music. You can laugh at their outfit. You can make fun of their album sales. You can roast their haircut. You can say they fell off. You can say they are washed. You can say their bars are weak. That is part of the game. That is part of the sport. Rap has always been competitive. That is one reason people love it. Two artists take shots at each other. Fans pick sides. Podcasts talk about it. Clips go viral. People argue in comments all day. That kind of conflict. Hip-hop has always had room for that. But there is one line most people understand. You do not bring family into it. Not the wife. Not the children. Not the mother. Because once you stop attacking the artist and start attacking the people they love, it stops feeling like sport. It starts feeling like war. And in this story, that line did not just get touched. It got smashed. To understand how everything exploded, we have to go back to the tension between 50 Cent and T.I. Now if you know hip-hop, then you know these are not small names. These are not internet kids chasing attention. These are two major figures with long careers, big personalities, big egos, and huge fan bases. T.I. is one of the South's most important rap voices. He built a legacy through charisma, hit records, street talk, and superstar energy. He has songs people still play years later. He carries himself like somebody who knows he is a legend, and in many ways he is. 50 Cent is different. 50 is not just a rapper. 50 is a master troll, a businessman, a survivor, a man who knows how to turn conflict into entertainment better than almost anyone in the game. He has been doing it for years. Some people rap well. Some people act well. Some people market well. 50 Cent knows how to make people react. That is his gift. He pokes. He laughs. He posts. He embarrasses. He keeps the pressure on until the other person breaks. And for a very long time, that formula worked. But this time, the person who broke first was not T.I. It was T.I.'s son. And that made everything more explosive. For years, T.I. had been trying to get 50 Cent into a versus battle. If you are young and you don't know what versus is, here is the simple version. It is a music battle. Two artists sit across from each other and play their songs back and forth. 20 songs against 20 songs. It is part celebration, part competition, part nostalgia, and part bragging rights. And during the pandemic, versus became huge. Big artists started stepping into that ring. Fans loved it because it answered a question people argue about all the time. Who really has the better catalog? T.I. clearly believed he had enough hits to go against 50 Cent. And more than that, he believed he could win. So he kept calling him out. Not once, not twice, over and over again. In interviews, on social media, on podcasts, in public appearances, T.I. wanted the smoke. Or at least he wanted the matchup. But 50 Cent never really gave him what he wanted. He didn't say yes. He didn't fully engage in the way T.I. wanted. Instead, 50 did what 50 does. He trolled. He mocked. He redirected. He turned the challenge into another internet game. That was already frustrating T.I. Because to T.I., this was about music, legacy, and respect. But to 50, it seemed like it was something else. He wasn't interested in playing by those rules. And that difference matters. Because once two people are no longer arguing in the same language, the conflict gets dangerous. One person thinks it is about music. The other person turns it into humiliation. One person wants a challenge. The other person wants control. One person wants the ring and wants the internet. And on the internet, 50 Cent has always been one of the most dangerous men alive. Things stayed tense for a while. Nothing fully exploded yet. The two men had their back and forths. The public watched. Fans joked about it. People debated who would win in a versus battle. But then came the post. And the post changed everything. Instead of keeping the issue between himself and T.I., 50 Cent posted a photo of Tiny Harris. Tiny is T.I.'s wife. She is also King Harris's mother. And the post was not respectful. It was not harmless. It was not a small joke. It was humiliating. It was public. It was the kind of post designed to make people laugh at someone. And when you have millions of followers, that kind of post is not just a joke. It is a spotlight. It tells the whole world, look at this person, laugh at this person, let's make this person part of the entertainment. That may be normal trolling behavior for the internet. But in the real world, that hits different, especially when it is somebody's mother. Because for a son, that is not content. That is personal. That is home. That is sacred. And that is why King Harris reacted the way he did. He saw the post. He saw his mother being publicly disrespected. And whatever emotion had been sitting in him woke up. Fast. He did not wait to calm down. He did not wait for advice. He did not wait for T.I. to step in and handle it. He went straight to Instagram Live. And once he did, the internet stopped scrolling. There are certain live stream moments where you can feel it right away. You can tell this is not fake outrage. You can tell this is not performance. You can tell this person is not acting. This is not a skit. This is not promo. This is not a rollout. This is anger. That was the energy people felt when King got on live. He was furious, not annoyed, not irritated, furious, and he made it very clear what pushed him there. In his mind, 50 Cent had disrespected his mother. And once that happened, all rules were off. Now this is the moment where the story goes from dramatic to dark. Because King did not simply defend his mother. He did not just say, "Don't talk about my mama." He painted his mother. 50 Cent's mother died when he was a child. That loss has always been part of his story. It is one of the deepest and saddest parts of his life. And King went right there. Hard. He made comments telling 50 to go dig up his mother. And the moment those words hit the air, everything changed. This was no longer regular rap disrespect. This was no longer internet banter. This was no longer trolling versus trolling. This was raw pain meeting raw pain. And it shocked people for a reason. Because there are things you can joke about and still come back from later. People can laugh off jokes about clothes. They can move past jokes about streams. They can even recover from some nasty diss records. But dead parents, that is a different category. That kind of disrespect sits heavy. It lingers. It stays in the room long after the live stream ends. That is why so many people watching had the same reaction. This just went too far. But King was not done. Once he got going, there was no stop button. He kept speaking from that place of fire. He kept repeating that he does not play about his mother. He kept making it clear that this was not something his upbringing would allow him to ignore. That part matters too, because in moments like this, people are not only reacting to the insult, they are reacting to identity. King was basically saying, "This is who I am, this is how I was raised, and this is why I cannot stay quiet when somebody disrespects my mom." To him, silence would look like weakness. Silence would look like disloyalty. Silence would feel like betrayal. And whether people agreed with how he reacted or not, a lot of people understood why the emotion was so strong. Because love makes people protective. Especially family love. Especially mother love. Especially public humiliation. But then King kept pushing. He brought up another deeply personal area in 50 Cent's life. His relationship. And King used it as another weapon. He basically said all the money in the world means nothing if you do not have love around you. That is a brutal thing to say to anyone. It is even more brutal when the world already knows there is pain there. So now King had hit 50 Cent in two places. His mother and his son. Loss above him. Distance below him. That is the kind of attack that feels designed to wound, not just win. And once people realized how far King was willing to go, the internet really lit up. Some people praised him. They said that is what a son is supposed to do. They saw loyalty. They saw defense. They saw a young man protecting his mother in public when another man tried to embarrass her in public. To those people, the logic was simple. If you bring somebody's mother into the beef, you should expect chaos. You should expect an emotional response. You should not act shocked when a son explodes. But other people saw it differently. They said yes, 50 Cent crossed a line first by posting Tiny. But King crossed an even darker line by bringing up a dead mother. That is where the debate got intense. Who crossed the bigger line? The man who publicly humiliated somebody's mother? Or the son who responded by attacking the other man's dead mother? That question became the center of the whole conversation. By the heart, it was no longer simple. It was not because when someone turns anger into music, the beef gets a second life. Now it is not just a viral clip. Now it is a song. Now it is repeatable. Now it is streamable. Now it becomes part of the culture. King dropped a diss track called Made Man. And the title itself says a lot. A made man sounds like somebody who has stepped into manhood. Somebody who is proving himself. Somebody who wants to show the world he is not a child anymore. That is the energy the song carried. The visuals matched that energy too. Parking garage. Foreign cars. Hard attitude. No backing down. The message was clear. I said what I said. I meant it. And I am standing on it. For a young artist, that kind of moment can do two things at once. It can gain attention, and it can deepen the conflict. People listened not just because of the music, but because of the story behind it. That is how internet beef turns into content, and content turns into momentum. Now the public was not just talking about what King said. They were consuming it, replaying it, debating it, sharing it, and every time someone shared it, the fire grew. This is one of the strangest things about modern rap beef. Pain becomes entertainment almost immediately. A family insult becomes a clip. A trauma becomes a meme. A diss becomes a trend. And people forget that behind all of it are real human beings with real emotions. That is why this situation felt so uncomfortable to a lot of people. Because yes, it was dramatic. Yes, it was viral. Yes, it was the kind of thing that dominates timelines. But it also felt ugly. It felt sad. It felt like people were watching a family wound turn into a public show. And then Boosie entered the conversation. When something major happens in hip-hop, everybody gives an opinion. Opinions. Rappers have opinions. Blog pages have opinions. Opinions carry extra weight because of who they come from. Boosie is one of those voices. Whether people agree with him or not, Boosie speaks from a place of lived experience. He has been in trouble. He has seen prison. He understands street rules. And he is not known for sugarcoating things. So when he talked about the situation, people paid close attention. What made Boosie's take interesting is that he did not just pick a side and cheerlead. He understood King's anger. That was his first point. He basically said, of course King reacted strongly, that is his mother. And that point is powerful because it cuts through all the internet noise. You can analyze strategy all day. You can compare who won the round. You can talk about social media and branding. But underneath all of that is one plain truth. A young man saw his mother being mocked. That is the emotional center of the entire conflict. Boosie understood that. He knew why King exploded. But he also made something else very clear. Understanding a reaction is not the same as approving it. And Boosie did not approve of how far King went. He said once you start talking about dead parents, you are crossing a line that is hard to come back from. That was the sentence people kept repeating. Because it captured the whole situation perfectly. Hard to come back from. Not impossible to apologize for. Not easy to fix. Not a misunderstanding. Hard to come back from. That means the damage is deep. That means even if people stop posting tomorrow, the memory of what was said remains. That means even if the beef cools off in public, the disrespect still exists in private. That is why dead family members bars are such a dangerous line in conflict. Insult. Finality of it. You are attacking someone who cannot defend themselves. You are opening pain that does not heal quickly. And you are doing it in front of the world. Boosie also pointed out something else people were thinking. This was a mismatch. King Harris is young. 50 Cent is a seasoned veteran at internet warfare. That matters because 50 knows how to weaponize chaos. He knows how to turn somebody's anger into their own downfall. He has done it before, again and again. He does not always need to out-rap you. He does not even need to out-talk you. Sometimes he just needs to make you lose control. And once you lose control publicly, he wins the optics game. That is part of why this situation concerned so many people. King was emotional. 50 is strategic. That combination can become dangerous very quickly. Boosie took it a step further by warning about real-world consequences. And this is where the story stops feeling like online drama and starts feeling heavier. Because Boosie has seen where reckless lead men throw their f***s. He has seen words turn into violence. He has seen a moment of anger become years of regret. So when he warned that this kind of behavior can end badly, it did not sound like empty talk. It sounded like lived truth. That is what gave his comments weight. He was not just reacting as a commentator. He was reacting like someone who knows what happens when ego takes the steering wheel. And then, as if the situation was not already messy enough, it started branching out. Boosie's own camp got pulled into the mix. Side comments became side beefs. The original conflict started growing extra arms. This is another thing about public drama. It spreads. One issue becomes 3 issues. One argument becomes a crowd. One conflict becomes a web. And that web becomes harder to control. Meanwhile, the culture kept reacting. Charlemagne looked at it and pointed to involve family. That is a key point. Because as much as King's shock, a lot of turning to this did not start with King. This started when Tiny was dragged into it. That does not excuse what King said, but it does explain the chain reaction. And if you want to understand any explosion, you have to look at the spark. The spark here was the post. DJ Academix looked at it differently, more like a scoreboard. That is often how media works now. Who is winning? Who is up points? Who got the better moment? That kind of framing turns pain into competition. And in a way, that is exactly what makes modern beef so dangerous. People stop asking, what is right? They start asking, who is winning? That shift changes everything. Because once winning becomes the goal, crossing lines starts to feel acceptable. That is how morality disappears from the room. Joe Budden had one of the more thoughtful takes because he understood both the music side and the emotional side. He pointed out that musical responses can be powerful and that real bars can change the conversation. That is true. When a beef stays in music, there is still some structure to it. Diss track for diss track. Bars for bars. Art for art. But once deceased family members get mentioned, music may not be enough to contain it anymore. That is the problem. Music has rules. Pain does not. And that is where the whole culture seemed to land in the end. No matter whose side people leaned toward, most people agreed on one thing. This had gone too far. And that brings us to the deeper meaning of this story. Because this story is not just about 50 Cent. It is not just about King Harris. It is not just about Boosie. It is about what fame does to conflict. Years ago, an argument might happen in a room, maybe a studio, maybe a parking lot, maybe a... Now, it happens to millions of people, and that changes human behavior. Perform their pain. They perform their pride. They perform their anger. Not always because they are fake. Sometimes because the internet rewards extremes. The louder the reaction, the more viral it becomes. The more ruthless the words, the more attention they get. The more shocking the insult, the more people clip it, repost it, and talk about it. In that environment, self-control becomes harder, because outrage becomes currency. And that is what makes this story so tragic in a way. What may have started as ego and trolling turned into something much more painful, but the machine of the internet kept feeding on it the entire time. Nobody gets rewarded for being calm online. Nobody goes viral for saying, "Let me think about this." Nobody gets clout for quietly protecting peace. But crash out, explode, say the wildest thing possible. That gets attention instantly. And young people are especially vulnerable to that pressure. King Harry, that young people often feel emotion and consequences. That is just life. When you are young, disrespect feels huge. Honor feels immediate. Response feels... You are not thinking 5 moves ahead. You are thinking, you disrespected my family, and now I need to show you that I am not weak. Older people can still make terrible choices too, of course. But youth adds pride, familiation are involved. Many older voices earn. They were not just saying, "This is messy." They were saying, "This can go somewhere dangerous." Because when people are no longer joking and no longer hiding their rage, the risk becomes real. Now let's talk about T.I. for a second, because his role in all of this is interesting. T.I. had been pushing for the Verzuz matchup for a long time. He wanted that battle. He wanted that stage. He wanted that respect. When things turned ugly, he responded in music. That says something. It suggests that in his mind, the battlefield was still rap. He went to the booth. He dropped diss tracks. He attacked through bars. That is a very different energy from the kind of emotional explosion King had on live. T.I. seemed to be fighting like an artist. King fought like a son. That difference is everything. An artist wants to win the battle. A son wants to defend his mother. And when those two energies overlap inside the same family, the conflict becomes layered. It is not just professional anymore. It is personal and professional at once. That makes it much harder to manage. Tiny is at the center of that, even though she was not the one seeking conflict. That is another important point. The person whose image set off the explosion was not the person pushing the original beef. She got dragged into it. That is what many people found so unnecessary. If the issue is between two men, why bring in the wife? Why make the family part of the joke? That is where many people felt 50 made the first serious mistake. Because once you attack someone's loved one, you should not be surprised when the emotion that comes back is bigger than you expected. But here is the hard truth on the other side too. Just because someone hurts your family does not mean every response is wise. That is one of the oldest lessons in life. Reaction can be understandable and still be destructive. A response can feel emotionally honest and still create damage that lasts much longer than the original insult. That is what made King's words so heavy. A lot of people understood them emotionally, but they still believed they were too dark. That tension between emotional understanding and moral disagreement is what made this story so gripping. People could feel both at once. I get why he was mad. And at the same time, he should not have said that. Those two truths can sit in the same room. And often, the most tragic conflicts are that kind of contradiction. Let's also say something important about 50 Cent. 50 is incredibly skilled at surviving conflict. He is almost built for it. He knows timing. He knows pressure points. He knows how to embarrass people. He knows how to make you look emotional while he looks amused. That is a rare power. But that power comes with responsibility too. Because when you know you can provoke people so effectively, you also know you can push them somewhere dark. And that is why some people felt he should have known better than to bring Tiny into it. A man with that much experience should understand how family disrespect can trigger uncontrollable reactions, especially from younger people, especially from sons, especially from a family as public and proud as the Harrises. So yes, King's response was shocking. But yes, 50's provocation was reckless too. That is why this is not a clean story. Both things can be true. One man pushed the line. The other man blasted through it. That is often how disaster works. Nobody is fully innocent by the time it ends. Fit in emotionally. Boosie fit in as the voice, saying what many grown people were thinking. This is a mess. Not entertainment. Not just funny. Not just spicy. A mess. Because that word captures the reality of it. Messy means tangled. Messy means ugly. Messy means nobody walks away clean. And that is exactly what this became. By the time everybody had said their piece, posted their clips, dropped their songs, and shared their opinions, the culture was left with one giant uncomfortable feeling. This should not have gotten here. That is the feeling hanging over the entire thing. Not who won, but how did this get so ugly? And that question matters more than the scoreboard. Because scoreboards disappear. The emotional not. Now think about the phrase Boosie used. You crossing a line that's hard to come back from. Why does that hit so hard? Because all of us know what that means, even outside rap. Most people have had an argument where someone should not have. Maybe in family, maybe in friendship, maybe in love. And even if the fight ended later, those words stayed. That is the human part of this story. People are not machines, cannot just delete someone's mind because you posted something new the next day. When the wound is deep enough, memory becomes part of the punishment. That is why certain insults change relationships forever. Even if everybody calms down eventually, the relationship is no longer the same. Something sacred got touched. And that is why this beef stood out. It did not just create knowledge. At this point, a lot of people watching were probably asking the same question. Can this even be fixed? And honestly, that is hard to answer. Maybe public tension can cool down. Maybe people stop posting. Maybe the music slows. Maybe the blogs move on to a new story. But the deeper issue, it is the emotional one. How do you trust someone bringing up your dead mother? How do you truly move past someone publicly humiliating your wife or mother? How do you truly move past words that were designed not just to respond, but to wound? That is not easy. And sometimes it never fully happens. That is the final uncomfortable truth in all of this. Hip-hop loves redemption stories. It loves peace stories. It loves reunion stories. But not every conflict gets a clean ending. Some just cool off. Some do not heal. They just stop being public. And maybe that is what happens here. Maybe the cameras move on, but the disrespect remains. Maybe that is what Boosie meant more than anything else. Hard to come back from. Not impossible to stop talking about, but hard to come back from in the heart. That is different. By now, it should be obvious why the whole world kept tuning in. Not because it was funny, not because it was healthy, but because it touched something primal. Family, respect, loss, pride, anger, legacy. These are powerful things. And when they all collide in public, people cannot look away. That is what this story really became. Not just a rap beef, a public collision of male pride and family pain. A younger man trying to prove loyalty. An older man using humiliation as a weapon. A father in the middle fighting through music. A culture watching in real time as every line gets tested. And maybe the saddest part is this. None of it had to go this way. The whole thing began around music and talk. But once ego mixed with disrespect, and disrespect touched family, the conflict stopped being manageable. That happens in life all the time. Small problem, big ego, no pause button, explosion. So what is the lesson here? The lesson is not that one side is perfect and the other is evil. The lesson is that there are some buttons you should not press. Because once you press them, the response may not come back in the form you expect. Humiliate someone's family publicly, and you may get rage instead of jokes. Poke at grief, and you may awaken darkness instead of competition. Turn pain into content, and you may lose control of what comes next. That is what this entire story teaches. Words matter. Not in the soft way people say it sometimes. In the real way. In the dangerous way. In the way that can shift the energy of an entire situation in seconds. A post is not always just a post. A joke is not always just a joke. A line is not always just a line. Sometimes it is a trigger. And once triggered, human emotion does not move neatly. It floods. It burns. It destroys. That is what we watched happen here. At the end of the day, hip-hop will survive this. The blogs will move on. The internet will find another story. The comments will scroll past more people's memory because it reminded everybody that even in entertainment, there are still wounds too deep to play with carelessly. Mothers matter. Family matters. Grief matters. And when people act like those things are just tools for laughs and clout, the response can get very ugly, very fast. That is why this story matters. Not because it was loud, but because it showed what happens when loud turns into hurt. Not because it was viral, but because it showed the cost of virality. Not because it was entertaining, but because it forced people to ask themselves where entertainment should stop. And maybe that is the biggest question of all. In a world where everything becomes content, what should still remain sacred? For a lot of people, the answer is simple. Your mother, your family, your dead loved ones, those should still be off limits. But once those limits are broken, you get stories like this. And stories like this never feel clean when they end. They feel heavy. So as we close, let's bring it back to where we started. Think again about the person who raised you, the person who protected you, the person whose love made you who you are. Now imagine seeing them disrespected in front of the whole world. That pain is real. But now imagine letting that pain pull you into saying something so dark that people will remember it forever. that damage is real too. And somewhere between those two truths lives this entire story. That is why so many people watched. That is why so many people argued. That is why so many people felt uncomfortable. Because everybody understood at least one part of it. The hurt, the rage, the overreaction, the line crossed, the no coming back feeling. It was all there. This was never just about a rap battle. It was about what happens when disrespect hits home. And once it hits home, no amount of fame, money, followers, podcast clips, or streaming numbers can make it feel small anymore. That is the real story. Not the memes, not the scorecards, not the blog titles. The real story is that somebody touched family. Family answered back with fire. And the whole world got a front row seat to what happens when pain becomes public. And now I want to hear from you. Who do you think crossed the line first? Who do you think crossed the line worst? Do you think King Harris was right to defend his mother, no matter what? Or do you think bringing up a dead mother is something you simply cannot justify? Put your thoughts in the comments. And if you made it all the way to the end, that tells me you like deep stories, not just surface drama. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay locked in. Because when the next big moment shakes the culture, we are going to break it all the way down. And trust me, this one will be talked about for a long time. Before we begin, I want to ask you for something real. Not a like, not a comment, not even a subscription. Just your attention. Because this story is not just about rap. It is not just about fame. It is not just about social media drama. This story is about something deeper. It is about family. It is about pain. It is about anger. And it is about what happens when somebody says something so disrespectful, so personal, so cruel, that there is no easy way to take it back. So before we get into this, take 1 second and think about the person who means the most to you. Maybe it is your mother. Maybe it is your father. Maybe it is your grandmother. Maybe it is the person who raised you when life was hard. Now imagine millions of people laughing while somebody disrespects them in public. How would that make you feel? Would you stay calm? Would you ignore it? Would you let it slide? Or would something inside you wake up instantly? Because that is exactly what happened here. One post, one reaction, one live stream, popping a situation spot, one of the multiple, personal, and dangerous beefs we have seen in a very long time. This was not just jokes, internet war of pride, trauma, legacy, and disrespect. And the moment did not hinged. You believe there are still some lines in this world that should never be crossed. Stay with me until the end. Because this story starts with 50 Cent. But it doesn't stop there. It grows bigger. It pulls in T.I. It pulls in King Harris. It pulls in Boosie. And before it is over, the whole culture is asking one very serious question. When somebody crosses a line like this, where do you even go from there? Let's get into it. There are always rules in hip-hop. Some rules are spoken out loud. Some rules are understood without anybody saying a word. You can clown somebody's music. You can laugh at their outfit. You fun of their. You can roast their haircut. You can say they fell off. You can say they are washed. You can say their bars are weak. That is part of the game. That is part of the sport. Rap has always been competitive. That is one reason people love it. Two artists take shots at each other. Fans pick sides. Podcasts talk about it. Clips go viral. People argue in comments all day. That kind of conflict. Hip-hop has always had room for that. But there is one line most people understand. You do not bring family into it. Not the wife. Not the children. Not the mother. Because once you stop attacking the artist and start attacking the people they love, it stops feeling like sport. Feeling like just get tucked. And how did the tension between 50 Cent and T.I. Now if you're small kids, these are two major figures with long careers, big personalities, big egos, and huge fan bases. T.I. is one of the South's most important rap voices. He built a legacy through career hit street talk energy. He has songs people still play years later. He somebody led many. 50 Cent is different. 50 is not just a rapper. 50 is a master.